This picture shows some anatomical terms. I'm not going to go through this one. If you're interested, you can learn those terms. But to start this lecture, let's talk about the sound wave. You know, the wave of a sound is characterized by two things. One, by the frequency, the number of the waves per period of time. For instance, here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 waves, versus we have here 1, 2, and 3. Increasing the frequency increases the energy of the wave. The higher the frequency, the distance between this wave to this wave is going to decrease. That's called wavelength, from crest to crest. So the higher the frequency, the shorter the wavelength. The lower the frequency, the higher the wavelength. So the first character of the sound would be the frequency or the wavelength of the sound. The second one, however, would be the intensity. Look at this two sound wave. They have the same frequency, two waves here and two waves here, but one is much taller than the other one. That is called the loudness or intensity. The higher the amplitude, the higher the intensity or the louder the sound would be. The units for frequency is hertz, is a cycle per second. The higher the frequency, the higher the pitch. Our ear can hear the sound between 20 to 20,000 hertz. You can see here, both of them, they have the same intensity or loudness. The unit for intensity or loudness is decibel. We hear the sound between 0 to 80 decibel. Probably I'm speaking on a 60 decibel. By increasing every 10 decibel, your sound is going to get 10 times louder. So if you have a sound of 100 decibel versus a sound of 0 decibel, is not 100 times louder, is 10 billion times louder. Because every time you increase it by 10 decibel, you're going to increase it by 10 times. So a sound of 60 decibel versus a sound of 80 decibel is 100 times louder sound. When you look at the ear, from the outside, which is called auricle, to the tympanic membrane is called external ear. This is a tympanic membrane. On the other side of tympanic membrane, they have a small cavity, and that is called middle ear. And middle ear is going to reach to inner ear, which is this blue one, and it looks like a snail. This snail or inner ear has the receptor for hearing and has receptor for balance. Middle ear is composed of 3 bones. As you can see, these 3 bones or ossicles is shown in this picture. It's the first bone, second bone, and third bone. The third bone, which is called the stapes, is leaning against a membrane that you don't see it here, but in this picture you may see it, and that membrane is called oval window. So here's what's going to happen. The sound is going to come here, vibrate your tympanic membrane, vibrate your 3 bones, it's called malleus, incus, and stapes, and this stapes here is going to make a vibration of the membrane in this side of the bone, and that membrane is called oval window. Oval window is attaching to the inner ear. So here's my inner ear. This structure is called labyrinth or the maze. So let's take a look at the structure of inner ear. Your inner ear is composed of 2 parts. The tail of this snail is called cochlea, and the rest is called vestibular apparatus. The cochlea is for hearing. Vestibular apparatus is for balance. Realize in this picture that you have a blue structure and it is being casted by this yellow one. This blue one is called membranous labyrinth, and the yellow one that's casting it for protection is called bony labyrinth. So membranous labyrinth is being casted by bony labyrinth, this yellow one. There's a space between the membranous and the bony one. This space is being filled by a fluid. It's called perilymph. Inside the blue one, inside this membranous labyrinth, you have fluid, and that is called endolymph. So in this picture, this is the blue one, is filled by endolymph, and outside the blue one, you have a space is being filled by perilymph, and then you have a bony material that is called bony labyrinth. You notice that the tail of this snail, the cochlea, it's going 2.5 times. Just for the sake of argument, let's open it and see how it's going to look like. I'm going to open this tail and it's going to show something like this. You realize this blue one is exactly this one. That is your membranous cochlea. This purple one is the space here, which is filled by perilymph. Inside this blue one is filled by endolymph. This membranous cochlea, this blue one, has another name. It's called cochlear duct. The space above the cochlear duct, I'm going to call vestibular duct. So that's a vestibular duct. The space below cochlear duct, I call it tympanic duct. Vestibular duct and tympanic duct, they're going to attach to each other at the end of this tail. The tip at the end of this tail is called helicotrema. The cochlear duct, it's sitting on a membrane, it's called basilar membrane. Remember we said after the sound is going to vibrate tympanic membrane, it's going to vibrate these three ossicles, and then it's going to vibrate oval window in the back of this stapes, right here. So in this picture, this is my oval window. Therefore, I would say the sound is going to come here, it's going to vibrate tympanic membrane, it's going to vibrate these three bones, it's going to vibrate the oval window, and then this vibration of oval window is going to make a wave inside the perilymph of vestibular duct. Remember here we have perilymph. So remember the vibration of this one is going to create a wave. This wave is going to continue the helicotrema and it's going to reach to the tympanic duct. This wave is going to come and it's going to hit another window. It's called round window. The reason we have this round window, because think about my hand as a round window. When the wave comes, and if it's a hard surface, it's going to hit the hard surface, it's going to bounce back. And you're going to hear the sound again. So for that reason, we have a round window here. So the sound is going to come, and it's going to hit this round window, and round window is going to bulge out and is like a shock absorber. So the wave is not going to turn back. We said that this space here is called vestibular duct. This membranous cochlea, this blue one, is called cochlear duct, and the space at the bottom is called tympanic duct. Vestibular duct also is called scala vestibuli. Tympanic duct also is called scala tympani. Here's what I'm going to do now. I like to cut this tail in this direction. Realize if I cut in this direction, I'm going to have a space on the top of this blue one, I'm going to have a blue one, and then I have a space on the bottom of this one. And that is going to continue all the way down. Let's take a look. We just cut it. If you magnify this one, you're going to see something like this. We have a space on the top, we have a space in the middle, we have a space on the bottom. Remember, a space on top is scala vestibuli, a space in the middle is cochlear duct, a space in the bottom is a scala tympani. What do I have inside the scala vestibuli and scala tympani? Perilymph. What do I have inside the cochlear duct? Endolymph. Don't forget that. The membrane that separates scala vestibuli from cochlear duct, this one, is called vestibular membrane. The membrane that separates your cochlear duct from scala tympani, this one is called basilar membrane. So this one is called vestibular membrane, this one is called basilar membrane. Now we can put everything together. Think about it. When the wave comes from the oval window and make a wave inside this perilymph, this line here, that must be vestibular membrane. So as a result, this wave is going to bend this vestibular membrane. This vestibular membrane is right here. So it's going to bend this vestibular membrane. Bending the vestibular membrane is going to make a wave inside the endolymph, inside here. So now you have wave here. So what is going to happen if you have wave here? Well, let's see what we have on the top of this basilar membrane. Let's make this one bigger. I have something here. I want to see what it is. And this structure is what you see in this box. This must be vestibular membrane, and this must be basilar membrane. I can see inside the cochlear duct I have a structure called organ of Corti. What you see here is the organ of Corti. There's a flap of a membrane. This guy is called tectorial membrane. We have some epithelial cells with some hair-like projection that is embedded inside this tectorial membrane. So this is called hair cells, these ones, because they have something like hair-like a structure. These are the receptors that detect sound, and they're going to send this information to this nerve out. This nerve is called cochlear nerve because we are in the cochlea. So it's called cochlear nerve. So here's what's going to happen. When the wave comes to the scala vestibuli and bend this vestibular membrane and create a wave inside the cochlear duct, is going to create a wave inside the endolymph, and as a result, because these cells, this hair-like structure, are very tiny and very soft, they start moving and hitting against the tectorial membrane, just like my hand. This is my tectorial membrane, and my fingers are hair cells. They're attached to the tectorial membrane. When the wave comes, now my hair cell is going to hit against the tectorial membrane, and that is going to stimulate these epithelial cells. I'll show you how, but I want you to understand first the idea. So the idea is the wave inside the scala vestibuli is going to bend this vestibular membrane, make a wave inside the endolymph, inside the cochlear duct, and it's going to move these hair cells, and hair cells is going to hit against the tectorial membrane, and that is going to create action potential. But how? Let's take a look at this picture. This is my tectorial membrane, and these are the hair cells. Did you notice that hair cells, some of them are shorter and one is much longer? Here's how it's going to work. If these hair cells bend toward the longest one, it's going to depolarize the cell. If these hair cells bend toward the shortest one, it's going to hyperpolarize the cell. So what you're seeing right now is going to depolarize the cell because these hairs are bending toward the longer one. If the hair bends this way, that means becomes like this. That is going to cause hyperpolarization. It's going to inhibit. If the hair bends toward the longest one, it's going to cause depolarization. So now let's take a look at the detail. This is my hair of the hair cells. The name of this hair, it's not really hair, it's a hair-like structure. It's called stereocilia. Stereocilia. Now when you look at this one under the electron microscopy, you can see that all these stereocilia that are attached to each other by a rope, if you will, is called tip link. At the tip of this stereocilia, you have a channel, and this channel is a potassium channel. Endolymph, this is endolymph, is full of potassium. If you bend this stereocilia toward the longest one, as you can see in this picture, you're going to pull this rope and you're going to open the potassium channel. As a result, potassium is going to rush inside the cell. When potassium comes inside the cell, potassium is a positive ion, and when potassium gets inside the cell, it's going to stimulate the cell. When the stereocilia is not being stimulated or inhibited in this position, there's some entrance of potassium. Some, it doesn't show in this picture, but there's some entrance. If you move it toward the longest one, there's more entrance. However, if you bend this one toward the shortest one, in other words, if you bend this stereocilia in this direction, you can see that you're closing off this potassium channel even more. So as a result, you're going to inhibit the cell. This is when it's stable. Here's when you bend it toward the longest one. Here's when you bend it toward the shortest one. So what is going to happen when potassium comes inside the cell and depolarize the cell? Well, the answer is, at the end, your cell is going to release glutamate and it's going to stimulate the neuron, and neuron is going to send the information. Remember, the more you're going to bend this stereocilia, the more you're going to open the potassium channel, the more potassium is going to come in, the more glutamate you're going to release. As a result, brain understands we are dealing with louder sound. The loudness of the sound depends on how much you're going to bend this stereocilia. But what about the frequency of the sound? How does my brain know this is a low frequency sound or this is a high frequency sound? Well, the answer is really simple. If you look at the cochlear duct, you can see your cochlear duct is in this shape. This area is called the base. This is called the tip or apex. As you can see, apex is broader than the base. Imagine I have this pen in my hand, and this pen is cochlear duct, and I ask you to bend it. If you want to bend this pen, you probably put your finger here and you can bend it pretty easily. If you put your finger here, probably you cannot bend it easily because I grabbed it. My point is, the apex of the cochlear duct can bend very easily versus the base. And remember I told you that the higher the frequency, the higher the energy. So therefore, when the sound comes, a low energy sound, a low frequency sound can bend the apex, but to bend the base of this cochlear duct, you need higher energy. So as you can see in this picture shows, to bend close to the base, you have the high frequency sound. To bend the apex of the cochlear duct, you need only a very low frequency sound. So if the information gets to my brain through the base, my brain understands that must be high frequency. If the information comes from the apex, my brain understands that must be a low frequency. So that's how my brain understands is a low frequency or high frequency. About the intensity or loudness, we said depends on how much you bend it and how much potassium comes in and how much glutamic acid you release. So we are done with the hearing. Now let's go to the balance. Remember we said that besides this cochlea, this is for hearing, the rest of them is called vestibular apparatus. And vestibular apparatus is responsible for balance. Let's talk about vestibular apparatus. In this picture, you see this blue one being cut. That is the bony labyrinth. This purple one inside is a membranous labyrinth. So remember, we cast this structure with a bony structure. So here we cut them. So you see these two areas, these two cavities. The top one is called utricle. The bottom one is called saccule. So the vestibular apparatus is composed of utricle and saccule. And then we have three semicircular canal. This is semicircular canal. 1, 2, and 3. This is called anterior, it's called posterior, and that's called lateral, or it's called horizontal. Again, I want to emphasize, what do we have between this bony one and this membranous one? Perilymph. What do I have inside this purple one? What do I have inside this membranous structure? Endolymph. This picture shows the same thing. Here is the tail that we just discussed and finished it, and here is the vestibular apparatus. Utricle, saccule, and 3 semicircular canal. Anterior, posterior, and lateral, which also is called horizontal. The membranous part of this semicircular is called duct. The bony part is called canal. So as you can see, the light blue, it says canal. The dark blue is called duct. The dark blue is a membranous, and light blue is bony structure. Also realize that when this semicircular canal is going to join the utricle, they're going to expand. Do you see this expansion? It's called ampulla. Also, you realize in this picture, inside the utricle and inside the saccule and inside the ampulla, you have darker spots. These darker spots are the structure that detect your balance. The structure inside the utricle and saccule is called otolithic organs. Another name for this otolithic organ is called macula. This picture shows macula. It's composed of some stereocilia, and the membrane that covers this stereocilia, we call it otolithic membrane. We had the similar structure in the cochlea. Over there, we call this membrane tectorial membrane. Here we call it otolithic membrane. And the structure you see in this ampulla is called crista ampullaris. Otolithic organs and the crista ampullaris. They're very similar. They have the same structure you saw in the cochlea. That means we have hair cells with some hair-like structures. They have some stereocilia, and one is longer and larger. It's called kinocilium. With the same token, if this hair-like structure, this is stereocilia, bend toward the longer one, that's going to stimulate this cell. If it's going to bend toward the shorter one, it's going to inhibit this cell. So as you can see in this picture, when they bend toward the longest one, it shows the stimulation. When they bend toward the shortest one, it says inhibition. At the upright position, brain has a baseline. As soon as you bend it toward the longest one, you're going to stimulate more. As soon as you bend it to the shortest one, you're going to stimulate less. So your brain understands being stimulated more or being stimulated less. After the cell being depolarized, because of potassium coming inside the cell, depolarized cell is going to open the voltage-gated calcium channel, and as a result, calcium comes in and release neurotransmitter the way that we learned before. Since we learned the basic information about how this cilium and kinocilium function, let's focus on utricle and saccule first. They are used for linear acceleration. That means moving in one direction. Let's say you're walking in one line. You're not turning, you're just straight moving. Or you're in an elevator, you're going up and down. That is called linear acceleration. Now, remember we have two of them, utricle and saccule. Utricle is going to detect your horizontal movement when you're moving forward, and saccule is going to detect when you are moving up and down, vertical movement. So, in this position, when the head is upright, as you can see, a stereocilia is straight. As soon as you bend the head, as you can see, now the stereocilia is going to bend. And if they're bending toward the longest one, they're going to create a stimulation. If they're bending toward the shortest one, they become inhibited. It is important for you to know that the macula in the utricle is oriented horizontally. That's why utricle is going to detect the horizontal movement. But the macula in the saccule is being oriented vertically, so that's why it's going to detect vertical movement. If you tilt your head forward, that's going to stimulate the utricle. If you move your head backward, it's going to inhibit the utricle. If you move your head to the lateral, cause excitation of the ipsilateral utricle. That means if I tilt my head to the right, my utricle of the right ear is going to get stimulated, and the utricle of the left ear is going to get inhibited. And if I move it toward left, if I tilt it to the left, my left ear utricle become excited and my right utricle become inhibited. So that's how your brain understands how your head moves. So forward is going to make it a stimulation, backward is going to make inhibition. The hair cells in the saccule are excited with both forward and backward with lateral and medial movement. When you move it to the forward and backward, it's called pitch. When you move it to the right and left, it's called roll. How about semicircular canal? We said there are 3 semicircular canal. This semicircular canal, they are perpendicular to each other. Each one has a 90-degree toward each other. And they are designed for angular movement, for acceleration and deceleration in the angular movement. So let's take a look at this one. This shows the crista ampullaris. Crista ampullaris is composed of these hair cells, just similar to the one that you saw in the macula and the one that you saw in the organ of Corti. The cilia is being embedded inside a gelatinous material is called cupula. The same idea. If this stereocilia moves toward the longer one, it's going to cause stimulation. If it's going to move toward the shorter one, it's going to cause inhibition. How does semicircular canal work? In this example, you can see the horizontal ones or the lateral ones. If the head is going to move in the counterclockwise, in other words, it's going to go this way. Not tilting, but it's going to go this way. If it's going to go counterclockwise, the horizontal semicircular canal of the left ampulla is going to get depolarized. So when I move my head toward the left, my left ear is going to get depolarized, and my right ear, the horizontal semicircular canal, becomes hyperpolarized. So let's review one more time and make sure we understood. We said utricle saccule, they use for static equilibrium. I'm sitting on the chair right now. I'm not falling because of my utricle saccule. But also they're used for dynamic equilibrium when I'm moving. But what type of movement? In one linear direction, either up and down or go straight. So it's for static equilibrium when I'm sitting, when I'm standing up, or when I'm walking or I'm using the elevator going up and down. However, the semicircular canal is used for angular movement. The superior canal, or it's called anterior, is used for keeping the balance when you nod. Posterior canal is when you tilt your head to the right and left. And horizontal canal when you shake and you say no. And finally, you have to understand, to keep your equilibrium is not only your vestibular apparatus, is not only your ear, but also it's going to be cerebellum, and also it's going to be your eye, and also it's going to be formation that comes from your proprioception. All of them together is going to work together to keep your balance.